come up. So again, good morning. My name is Jose Rizzo. I am the Center Director for the Family Justice Center here in Concord. I will be your host today. We have an amazing presenter today, Ms. Jessica Mark. Jessica is a supervising attorney at Bay Legal Aid. Our presentation today will be a basic overview of government benefits. So again, I am with the Family Justice Center, and we are a one-stop shop for some amazing resources for survivors of interpersonal violence, sexual assault, elder abuse, and human trafficking. Um, just a reminder to everybody, let's do our best to uphold some Zoom etiquette. Yes, all of you are experts in a number of different fields, but today's expert is Miss Jessica, who will be presenting with us today. Along the way, if you have questions, our ask is that you just put them in the chat. Jessica will do her best to go ahead and answer those after a brief interruption that I'll be making along the way. And if you have further questions, and perhaps we don't have the time to get to all of your questions, just as a reminder, Ms. Marta sent you all the communication email with the Zoom link. We can route questions over to her, and then she will make sure to get them to Jessica, and we will make sure to include those in a follow-up email to you all. Within the follow-up email, you will be receiving our presentation deck today, as well as a link to today's recording. And again, if we have any follow-up questions, those will go up there. In addition to a survey, just a reminder, please take a couple of minutes to do the survey. It helps inform us in what we are doing and how we can continue to perhaps do it better or just differently. With that said, I'll go ahead and hand on over speaking responsibilities over to you, Jessica. Again, I'll continue to monitor the chat and let people in along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Mark. I'm a supervising attorney at Bay Area Legal Aid. My area practices government benefits, and I'm a little bit of a benefits generalist in that I've worked on pretty much all of the programs, with the exception of EDD benefits. That's kind of my benefit blind spot. I'm excited to be here to present with you all today. I just want to apologize in advance. I woke up with a little bit of a cough. I'm hoping it's just allergies, but we'll find out. But I have lots of liquids here with me, but I'm a little scratchy still. So sorry about that in advance. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Jose, can you just give me some kind of, can you see that? Great. All right, then I think we can get started. So today I'll talk to you a little about, oh, I keep forgetting to update my agenda slide. This isn't totally accurate, but we will talk about Bay Area Legal Aid, CalFresh, CalWorks, General Assistance, and I have some slides here on Social Security that honestly we'll see how far we get into that, but I kept the slides in so at least you all have the information. So for those who aren't familiar, Bay Area Legal Aid provides free legal services and representation in a couple different areas of law. We serve 7 Bay Area counties. We essentially span from down in like San Mateo, Santa Clara County up to Napa County. We don't serve Solano and we don't serve Sonoma, but otherwise you would be in our service area, and we're happy to help you out if you are. We do have some eligibility requirements, so people have to live in one of our 7 Bay Area counties. They have to be income eligible, which we can sort through, but just kind of generally speaking, about $2,600 for one person. If someone is like low income, especially if you're sending them for help with their benefits, if they like might qualify for benefits, they probably qualify for our services. So feel free to send them over and I can sort through that part. And then we do have some citizenship and immigration status requirements. So we can serve most people who are in the United States legally on some kind of permanent visa. We can also serve people who are survivors of violent crime, including trafficking or like domestic violence are the big ones, but also if there are other crimes that they qualify for, we might be able to serve them as well. The big things that we can't serve are people who are DACA recipients, or if you're here on like a temporary visa, like a fiance visa or a student visa, those people tend not to qualify for our services unless they also fall into one of the other categories, such as a survivor of violence. I have slides here on the work that we do, and I won't go through them all, but you have it here to refer to. For our benefits work, that's me. I will say I'm the only benefits attorney we have for Alameda and Contra Costa County, so our capacity is pretty limited. Right now, we have Social Security listed on here, but because our capacity is limited, I'm actually not taking Social Security cases. I can give advice to people, but that would be all. But I take CalWORKs, CalFresh General Assistance pretty regularly, and we can help people with information and advice all the way up to full scope representation in their hearings, if it's just depending on what the issue is. We also have our domestic violence prevention team does immigration and family law. I will say right now we're actually not taking immigration cases. They're also at capacity, but we do have a family law team that I believe you all are actually really closely tied to at the Family Justice Center. Um, we have a housing team, we have healthcare access, consumer protection, reentry, and we have a youth justice team that can help people ages 13 to 26. But that's actually all I have on Bay Legal Services. I'm already seeing a couple of chats came through. Anything for me, Jose?
Taking a look. The only question is if the presentation will be shared with us. Yes, the presentation will be going out to all participants who received the link.
Thanks. Then with that, let's talk about CalFresh. So at the federal level, CalFresh is called the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. It also used to be called food stamps. That's a name that is still people are pretty familiar with, so you'll hear that a lot too. In California, we call it CalFresh. It's all the same program. It's a nutrition program that provides monthly food benefits to people. Your benefits are issued on an EBT card that you can then use as a credit card at grocery stores, farmers markets, or online retailers. But it's not a cash benefit, and there are limits on how you can spend the benefit. So you can use it to buy food, seeds, and plants to grow food, but you're not able to use it on anything else. The big ones that we see are non-food items like diapers or the like household paper products that people need, medications, and you also can't use it to buy hot foods or foods that are eaten in the store unless you're approved for the restaurant meals program, which I'll get to. CalFresh is given to households, and a household is defined as a group of people who live together and purchase and prepare food together. People don't have to be related, and it's not related at all to your taxes, which is something that people sometimes think. Uh, Really, you're just looking at like how people are living and how they share their food or if they share their food. So if you have four people living in one home, you can have four households of one, you can have one household of four, you can have any combination thereof. It just kind of depends on what those people's relationship is. Uh, there are some people who, if they're living together, they have to be in the same CalFresh household. That's going to be spouses who live together and children under age 22 who are living with their parents. That's a really big one. We'll see a lot of people who we're in the Bay Area, everything's really expensive. So these young adults are living with their parents, but they're otherwise living pretty independently. They're working, they're like out running the streets, kind of doing whatever. They usually feed themselves. The parents don't necessarily realize that that child is on their CalFresh, and so they're not reporting that income. And that causes a problem. It causes overpayments down the line. So just want to flag if there is a household where that's the case, there is a child under age 22 living with their parents, they are on the CalFresh, they can't be separated, and that child's income still also needs to be reported. Even if that child isn't like supporting the household, even if they keep that income all to themselves and their parents don't have any access to it, it all still has to be reported. Immigrants are some immigrants are eligible for CalFresh. It just depends. I have a non-exhaustive list here. It's actually pretty similar eligibility to Bay Legal's eligibility. So people who are here on some kind of permanent visa tend to be eligible. U or T visa applicants or recipients, those are going to be your your survivors of crime. VAWA applicants are going to be people who are they were applying to be a citizen through a spouse who then became abusive, and so they're able to petition for citizenship on their own. They would be eligible for CalFresh too. The big groups of people who are not eligible are going to be people who are applying for SIGIS, special juvenile immigrant status, people who are applying for asylee status, they are not eligible until it's approved, and people who are either undocumented or receiving DACA. And Jose, I'll get to you in a sec. There are mixed status households, so you can have people who a household where some of the people qualify and some of the people don't. The biggest example of that we see in my practice is going to be people who you have parents who are non-citizens and ineligible, and children who are citizens and they're eligible for CalFresh. So in that situation, the household would apply for CalFresh. You list all of the people who live in the home on the application, and you separately indicate who it is that's applying. So you would list the parents, you would include their income information, but you would just indicate they're not applying for the grant. You don't have to say anything else. You shouldn't lie about their immigration status. You just don't have to say anything about their immigration status at all. And you shouldn't give any fake information. And they'll assess the children's eligibility for CalFresh, and like I said, the parents' income information has to be included because that's used in determining whether or not the children are eligible. Go ahead, Jose.
So our first question comes from William Cooper. Can we advocate for an increase in CalFresh benefit amounts?
I cannot, and that's not what my role here is today.
Our next question comes from Alessandro Ramirez. Do the parents still receive benefits for the child up to age 22?
Yeah, the children are part of the CalFresh household. You're getting CalFresh for that child if they're still in the home.
And that's it for now.
Okay, thank you. So throughout the CalFresh program, there are special rules related to people who are elderly or disabled. For the CalFresh purposes, elderly is defined as someone who's age 60 or older, and disabled is defined as someone who's receiving a disability-based benefit with a test as stringent as Social Security. That's a really high bar, so that's essentially just going to be Social Security, or if you're getting VA benefits and have a total disability or needs aid and attendance. VA benefits are one of few other benefits I haven't actually worked very much on. So I can't go into any other detail than that about the VA. But any other disability benefit, their test is easier. So if you're like getting GA and you're found to be disabled for GA, that wouldn't count. If you're getting like workers' comp or state disability, that wouldn't count. It needs to be Social Security or the VA benefits. And SSI recipients are eligible for CalFresh. College students are generally not eligible for CalFresh. In order to be a college student, you in the CalFresh program, you need to be between the ages of 18 to 49, physically and mentally fit, enrolled at least half time as defined by the school, and enrolled in what's called higher education, which means that you had to have a high school diploma or the equivalent in order to be enrolled. If you meet all of those requirements, then you're not eligible for CalFresh unless you meet an exception. Uh, the ones that we see most often are going to be you're employed for at least 20 hours a week, you're approved for work study, and or you're participating in an approved local program that increases employability. Uh, that last one, that's like a list that CDSS, the California Department of Social Services, maintains on their website. And it's just this really long Excel sheet that includes all the Cal states, all of the community colleges, and all the UCs. And so you'll scroll down and you find your school, and then you scroll over and see if your major is listed there or not. And if it is listed, you meet that exception. And if it's not listed, you don't, and you would need to make another exception. Okay, let me pause here. That's all I have on who can get CalFresh. Any other questions?
We don't have anything at the chat at this time,
Great.
Jessica.
Okay, then let's talk about financial eligibility. So in order to determine someone's financial eligibility, we first have to determine what money counts. So in order to be considered income, money has to be actually available or reasonably anticipated. And reasonably anticipated means that you know the approximate date and amount that you're going to receive. So My job is a salary job. It's not based on hourly work. So every other Friday, I get paid the same amount of money, no matter how many hours I work, no matter what it is that I did over that time. I don't have overtime. My pay is the same whether I used like sick or vacation or anything like that. So my income is all reasonably anticipated. If I were to apply for CalFresh, I would list all my money as income, even if I haven't received it, because I know that I will get it. My dad, for instance, works in a warehouse. He's an hourly employee. Sometimes there's overtime available, sometimes there's not. My dad is also an old man, so physical labor is hard for him. So sometimes he takes sick days, and usually that's paid, but sometimes it's not. And so his pay fluctuates a little bit more. And so his income, probably most of it, he always has 40 hours a week at least, but sometimes he'll have a little bit more. Very rarely he'll have less, but that's like it's very it's not very often. So his 40 hours is probably reasonably anticipated, and those weeks where he does get overtime, that's probably not reasonably anticipated because it doesn't come reliably enough. We don't know exactly when he'll have overtime available to him. Uh, we may also see people who are like working in the gig economy or people who are working in like restaurants, for instance, where your hours maybe are subject to a lot more flexibility. They fluctuate a lot more. You don't know if you're like when you're going to have time to drive and when you're driving. For instance, if you're driving Uber, like thinking about a gig economy worker, you don't know when exactly you'll drive. You don't know exactly how many people you'll get. You don't know exactly how far you'll get. Like you have no idea how much money it is that you can make. And maybe you're able to reliably make a certain amount each time, but maybe you're really not. In that case, your income may or may not be reasonably anticipated. If you don't really know when you're going to make money or how much you're going to make, that's not going to be reasonably anticipated. And so in that case, that money wouldn't be countable until it's actually received. Uh, there are some things that are just not considered income. Uh, the idea of in-kind income is kind of throughout government benefits programs, and that means things that you get for free as opposed to getting cash. The biggest one is like for your reduced housing. In the CalFresh program, free housing isn't considered income for a CalFresh person, so you don't have to worry about if someone doesn't pay rent. We don't have to worry about that kind of reducing their income or increasing their income, excuse me. If you have a student under age 18 working, their money is also not considered income. And if you have a college student who has a work study job, that's also not considered income. There's some other things listed here, but those are the big ones I see in my practice. Once we figure out what someone's income is, we're going to go and apply there are two different income tests. The first is the gross income test. And so it actually just went up on October 1st. We'll take their gross income, which means their pre-tax income, and we're going to apply it to these amounts. And if it's below this amount, then they might qualify and we'll continue with the analysis. And if it's over this amount, they don't qualify. The exception to that is if you have a household with an elderly or disabled member, remember that's going to be someone over age 60 or getting a disability-based benefit. They can continue in the analysis if their income is over this amount. They're going to have to be under the resource limit though instead. So once we've done the gross income test, we're going to apply a bunch of deductions. I won't actually go through these with you. We don't do like these calculations by hand, just to kind of give you an idea of the calculations are actually quite complicated in a CalFresh case. The biggest one I'll note is the housing deduction. So if you have someone who has income, doesn't have housing, they're probably going to get a pretty low CalFresh grant if they qualify. Um, on the flip side, if someone has high housing costs, then that can increase their CalFresh. The other one I'll flag are medical expenses. If you do have someone who's over age, someone who's either elderly or disabled, so over age 60 or getting Social Security, then they can get a medical expense if they have unreimbursed medical expenses over $35 that they pay out of pocket in a single month, then they can get a deduction for that too. Once we've applied all the deductions that count, we'll look at the net income test, and you'll see these amounts are pretty low. And again, if your income is below this amount, then you'll qualify. If your income is over this amount, you don't qualify. There's another exception For elderly or disabled households with only one or two people, they can get if they are over the net income test, they can get the minimum benefit, which is only $23. Otherwise, people just don't qualify. CalFresh does have a resource limit. Most people aren't subject to it. The big exceptions are going to be those elderly or disabled households whose income was over that gross income test, or people who have been convicted of welfare fraud in the past. They may be subject to the resource limit too. The resource limit itself is quite low. There are some exceptions. But that being said, I've been doing this work for 10 years now, and I've never had a case that came down to the CalFresh resource limit. So I let you know it's there, but I don't spend a lot of time talking about it. And here you can see if someone is approved, these are the maximum amounts that they can get. The amount that you get does scale down if you have other income. The minimum benefit actually so October 1st they just went up. The minimum benefit is now $24, not $23. But here you go. Go ahead, Jose.
So we have a two-part question. Are these income guidelines statewide? And are these for
Yes.
all programs? And is this the 2026 standard now?
So, first, are these statewide? Yes. Are these for all programs? No. I'm only talking about CalFresh right now. Nothing I'm saying is about everything else. And are these the 2026 standards? These don't run on the calendar year, so these numbers are for the fiscal year, which started October 1st. But yes, they are the updated numbers.
That's all we have at this time.
Okay. So people can apply for CalFresh in person, online, or by phone. Oh, sorry, it's the Alameda County phone number. You can apply in Contra Costa too. The number is on the EHSD website. Once your application is filed, then county staff will reach out for an interview. That's going to be done over the phone. I will say sometimes people have problems getting the interview done. Usually, um, I mean, kind of depends on the county, but it can be difficult to actually like get the call when you're ready for it essentially because they don't it's not like they reach out to you to schedule a time that works for both of you. um so it can be hard to get the interview done. If that's a problem that someone you're working with is having, if they're able, like, you're entitled to an in-person interview. And what I found in my practice is if someone is able to go to the office for an in-person interview, that's actually like a fast, easy way of getting it done. That's not accessible to everyone. I do recognize that, but if it is accessible for someone, that can be a good way of, if the interview is the barrier, just getting that done and out of the way. When you do the interview, they're going to tell you to provide verifications. I won't read this list to you, but this is the sort of information that CalFresh will ask you to verify. They can require you to verify the information, but not the form that the information takes. So the example I like to give is like if you have if you are being asked to verify your income, they can ask you to verify your income. They can't require you to provide pay stubs. And so it could be that pay stubs are the easiest way. They need your gross income. So if you have a different way of verifying your gross income, then you can do that too. But also, like, for instance, if you're no longer working and they want you to verify your income, you're not going to be able to provide pay stubs. What you might need to provide is like a sworn statement or something from your employer confirming that you don't work anymore, something like that. Applications should be processed within 30 days. I haven't seen a problem with that in Contra Costa County, but some of our other counties, that's more of an issue, particularly actually Sonoma. If there's anyone here in Sonoma County, they've been taking a longer time. If they do take more than 30 days, you have the right to request a hearing. You can actually get an expedited hearing on that basis. You could get expedited service within 3 calendar days if you meet one of these exceptions listed here. The biggest one that I see in my practice is going to be one where your gross income and your liquid assets are less than your monthly housing costs. The DV survivor, I just haven't seen a lot of shelter waiting lists in my personal practice, but I think that could also be a relevant one for people. No matter how long they take to approve your application, your benefits should go back to the date that you applied. Go ahead, Jose.
The next question is from Swastika. Why are they asking for sponsor information? Is there any consequence for sponsor if anyone applies for CalFresh, who they sponsor for?
So they ask for sponsor information because your sponsor's income could be required, like can be counted for in assessing your eligibility. And my understanding of the way that it works. So your question about the impact on sponsors is actually an immigration question from the like benefits social service side. No, there's no penalty, but my understanding is that the social service office has to inform immigration USCIS that the sponsored non-citizen is getting benefits. And I don't like I haven't ever heard of someone being like penalized because of that. But part of it also kind of is like, how do I say it? Like that can change, right? And that would be it would like there are some things that would be legal. And again, that's like now we're getting into immigration law, not my area of practice. So all I can say is right now I haven't heard of anyone getting any kind of penalty, but I it's not impossible that that could happen in the future or change. Uh, There are some rules for people who are unhoused. These rules actually apply for most of these rules apply for everyone. If someone is unhoused, they don't have to report an address, but they do need to apply in the county where they live. People could use their CalFresh at the farmers market, not just unhoused people. But most farmers markets have what's called like a market match program. And so the way it works is you go to like the tent at the farmers market. That's where like the organizers of the farmers market are, and you tell them, I want to spend $20 in cowfish at the farmer's market. And then they tell you, or they give you a voucher for $40. It essentially doubles the money that you can spend on the farmer at the farmer's market. And that can be really beneficial for people to get fresh food. There is the restaurant meals program, like I mentioned. So this allows people to use their CalFresh to buy hot food or food that's intended to be eaten in the store, like a rotisserie chicken or going to a restaurant. Uh, in order to qualify for the restaurant meals program, you have to be either unhoused or elderly or disabled. But it is really easy and it should, for most people, it's really straightforward. If you have someone who falls into that, but their card was declined at a restaurant or something like that, then they just need to call the county and there's like a button that they check and that fixes it right away. People can also identify, they can verify any information, but also identity through collateral sources. So collateral sources, that means that I don't have like a physical thing that I can give you to verify the information you've asked for, but there's this third party who can vouch for it. So for example, if you don't have a written lease, then you could do a sworn statement that talks about what your rent and everything is and verifies the information. But also, you could use a collateral source where they call your landlord and your landlord confirms, yes, Jessica lives at this address. Her rent is this much. She does pay, like, she's responsible for utilities. That's not included in her rent. Uh, like I said, since it now there's sworn statements are allowed for a lot of information, collateral sources aren't as important. But for people who are unhoused, one of you, for instance, could be a collateral source to be like, yes, I have met Jessica Mark. I know that this is her, and I know that she is the person in front of you requesting CalFresh benefits. Once benefits are approved, they're going to be certified for a certain amount of time. That's going to be 12 months for most households with a 6-month report due called a SAR 7. Uh, There are some households that can be certified for longer, but most people are going to be that 12-month certification period with the 6-month mid-period report. Once these reports are made, your benefits are going to be mostly frozen. They're not going to change month to month, and they can only change in certain circumstances. So outside of your SAR 7 and your recertification, you'll need to report if your income goes above the income reporting threshold, or if you're subject to the work rules, you need to report if your work goes below 20 hours a week or 80 hours a month. Uh, the income reporting threshold is something that most people don't understand. It's actually really complicated. After you're approved, you get this like nonsensical notice that explains that if your income goes up above uh, a certain number, the you can look it up for someone if you want 130% of the federal poverty limit for for their household size. But if their income goes above that amount, they need to report it. Uh, the notice is just long and unclear, so I've actually never met a client who has been familiar with the concept unless they've already had an overpayment in the past. Uh, but that is like if your income goes up too high, you need to report it to the county, I guess is how I would simplify it. And then the work rules, which we can talk a little bit about later, but uh, right now, at least they're not in place in California, so we don't need to worry about that today, at least. CalWORKs and general assistants have more mandatory reports, so if someone's receiving those benefits too, they need to report more things. Oh, and if you do have to report, you have 10 days to report it. Anything that's not mandatory is voluntary, and essentially, uh, if it would make their benefits go up, then they'll want to report it right away, and if it'll make their benefits go down, then they want to wait. So if you lose your job, you want to report that right away. Though if you don't, you're not required. Excuse me, you won't be punished for it. Uh, on the flip side, if like your rent goes down, for instance, your housing cost, you don't have to report that right away. You probably don't want to because it could make your CalFresh go down. Okay, and here are the work rules. So I will say off top that these are like literally changing as we speak. So what I'm saying is kind of a grain of salt. What I'll say, the CalFresh program does have work rules. We call it able-bodied adult without dependents. Uh, Even that name could change, but really what it says is people can receive CalFresh for 3 months in a 36-month period unless they work 20 hours a week or participate in work like programs. California's been under a waiver for this rule since like the Great Recession, sometime in 2008. Contra Costa County and a couple other Bay Area counties actually came out of it for a very short amount of time right before the pandemic, but nobody actually, my understanding is that nobody was ever actually terminated based on this. Like it was less than the 3 months. So like people might have heard of it, you might be a little familiar, but actually we haven't had to deal with it in a real way for the state in almost 2 decades. This is changing. Originally, the state had a waiver that went through January 31st, 2027. Then that waiver was changed over the summer, and the Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, oversees food stamps at a federal level. They rescinded the waiver and only issued it until January 31st, 2026. But then about 2 weeks ago, they said that the waiver would expire November 3rd. The state of California is working to implement, but they've said they're not going to be able to by then. So there's like a lot more information to come about this. There will be trainings that like come out. I recommend you just kind of keep an eye on it. Honestly, it's also like this is the information that I have. I've only been in practice for 10 years, so I've also never had one of these cases, so I haven't had to go in to detail. So I'll just flag for you all, this is a new area for all of us that we're all kind of learning about together. I forget the saying about like building the plane while it's flying or something like that, but we're kind of working on it together. I apologize I can't give you more detail, but just want to put it on your radar because it will be a big deal for people. And that takes me to the end of CalFresh. Any other questions about food stamps?
I don't have any questions right now in the chat.
Okay, then I'm going to go into CalWORKs. So at the federal level, CalWORKs is called the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. This program works a little differently than CalFresh. Like SNAP exists in all the states. If you leave California, there is some version of food stamps that might look a little bit different, but the larger like principles are all the same. And so you can probably get your food stamps in another state. TANF, on the other hand, is just like the federal government gives the state a block of like a bunch of money and they let the state do what they want with it with the goal of, I think the goal is actually like reducing teen pregnancies or something like that. Um, and so some states have like they've put that into like flyers and information and training about like safe sex and things like that, or abstinence and things like that. California has decided to make this a cash aid program for children who are deprived of parental support and their adult caretaker relatives. Deprivation is defined as when at least one parent is absent, deceased, disabled, or unemployed. And that can also include underemployed if they're working but not working full time. That can also qualify you. So CalFresh went to households, CalWORKs goes to assistance units. And to figure out who's in the assistance unit, we're going to start with an eligible child. So has to be someone who's under age 18, unless they're going to graduate high school before they turn 19. from there, if that eligible child has any siblings or half siblings that they live with, they also have to be included in the CalWORKS assistance unit. From there, any parents of any of those children also have to be included. Uh, and then if the parent is a minor living with their parent, so let's say our eligible child is like an infant, our parent is like a 16-year-old teen mom, and she's living with her parents, then all three generations would have to be included. Uh, and then the sponsor of a sponsored non-citizen for the same reasons we talked about in CalFresh. There are some people who can choose whether or not they want to be in the CalWORKS assistance unit. If there are step parents in the home, they can choose to be a part of it. If there are other children in the home, or if there's a non-parent relative caretaker. So what those two things can look like. If I am taking care of my sister's daughter, then I can get CalWORKS for my sister's daughter, or I can get CalWORKS for myself. Or I can also get CalWORKS for myself. Like I can get it just for her, I can get it for both of us. If I have my own child, I could get CalWORKS for my sister's child and myself. I could get CalWORKS just for my sister's child, but not for myself or my child. Or I could get CalWORKS for my child, but not my sister's child. So it just kind of depends. If you're not the parent, you're not required to get CalWORKS for them. And so it depends on what's most helpful for the family. Pregnant people are eligible for CalWORKS in all three trimesters, and SSI recipients are not eligible. But if there is an eligible child, you can get it just for that person. So for in the example, if I'm getting CalWORKS for my child and my child gets SSI, I could actually get CalWORKS as an assistance unit of one, and vice versa. If I were getting SSI, I could get SSI for myself and CalWORKS for my child.
We
Questions?
have a few questions coming in. The first one is, what will happen when the federal funds stop supporting the funds for this program?
I don't understand the question. Can that person come off mute and explain?
This one's for Sarah Gallosa.
Yes, good morning. So my understanding is that CalWORKS and maybe I'm wrong, but CalWORKS and Cash Aid is funded by the federal government. And my understanding is as of next year, they will no longer fund it. What will happen to those beneficiaries?
So CalWORKS is funded partially by the federal government and partially by the state. The state actually also puts a lot of money into CalWORKS.
Okay,
But I the funding like hasn't been cut. I mean, there is no budget at the federal level for next year. So it's not to say that it's impossible that they decide to defund the TANF program, but that's not something that I've heard. So uh yeah.
all right,
Follow-up to that one is, does a government shutdown affect these programs?
Maybe. The problem is we're kind of like month to month. So CalWORKS for now is fine. Like I said, California puts in a lot of money to the CalWORKS program. If the and the like funding structure operates differently. And so if the pandemic lasted a lot longer, like if we're getting into December and we still don't have a budget, then CalWORKS could come into risk, but for now, CalWORKS is pretty okay. Um, CalFresh, on the other hand, the benefit that goes to individuals is actually fully funded by the federal government. The state puts in some money for the actual administration of the program, but the benefit itself all comes from the federal government. So October payments were sent out, but November payments are at risk. We don't know what's going to happen yet. If we're still California has to like start the process of issuing payments by the 21st. And so if we don't have a federal budget by then we're looking at the very least at late payments. But that's another thing that like, the information is coming out kind of like quickly. Like we'll see. There are no updates yet. It could be like while we're sitting in this meeting, something happened. I don't know. Like it's happening fast. So I would say to just keep an eye out. But yeah, if nothing happens by the 21st, then people's food stamps will at the very least be late for November.
Our next question comes from Jocelyn Delgado. I'm not sure I understand the question or if it's going to make sense, Jessica. It's what about people that want to apply for CalWorks? Do they need to file for child support? Because I heard so, and some mothers do not want to deal with the other parent because of many problems, custody, neglect of children, if the other parent gets to spend time with the child.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little later.
Okay. Um, Another one there comes up with the Fed shutdown. And then I have a 17-year-old unaccompanied minor who is a victim of sexual assault. Can we apply for CalFresh and food stamps based on victimization? How would new changes impact his application? He is not a US citizen.
Uh, so that's the sort of thing that like we would need to look more closely at. I would recommend that you like refer that client to Bay Legal. Or if you would, my email is at the end. If you want to reach out to me and we can talk more one-on-one and get more information, I'd be happy to talk that through with you, but it's not something I can answer right here, right now.
And then our final question comes in. Can you please clarify the difference between TANF and CalWorks?
There is no difference. TANF is just the name for it at the federal level, and California has called it CalWorks because California likes changing the names of their programs.
And that's where we're at now. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so immigrant eligibility is pretty similar to CalFresh. I listed it kind of differently here, but the big exceptions or the big people who are going to be eligible are going to people who are green card holders are going to be eligible LPRs. People who are granted already, refugees, asylees, if you have withholding and deportation, things like that. If you're paroled for at least 12 months, you can be eligible. So that was like a big thing when we had humanitarian parolees from Afghanistan and Ukraine in the last couple of years. They would qualify under that. VAWA self-petitioners, survivors of crime who are in the process of filing for a T visa, or survivors of crime who are applying for a U visa. They've already submitted that application. They can be eligible. And then COFA migrants, which are people from specific places, and I won't really get into PRUCAL. That I think this kind of covers everyone. Big exceptions for people who aren't eligible are again people who are applying for asylum or applying for special juvenile immigrant status. Once it's approved, you're eligible, but while it's pending, you're not eligible. And then DACA recipients. Just like in CalFresh, CalWorks has two income tests. Uh, and again, we have to look at the income that we're counting. So certain things are just not going to count. If the child has income, that isn't going to count. SSI doesn't count. And the income of a non-needy relative caretaker. So in the example I gave, where I was taking care of my sister's child and I didn't get CalWorks for myself, I only got CalWorks for my sister's child. I'm what's called a non-needy relative caretaker, and so I'm not included in the grant, and my income isn't counted. In that case, my niece, I guess in this example, her income would be the only income that counts, and she's not going to have any income. And to be clear, her like personally, like if my niece had a job, her income wouldn't count, but I mean income from her parents. Uh, Income that is not reasonably anticipated, that's the same idea as in CalFresh. So if you don't know the approximate date and amount that you're going to be paid, it doesn't count. So gig workers, people whose hours fluctuate a lot, those kind of people, they might have income that isn't going to count until they receive it. And then if there's income of an abuser that requires the abuser's permission to access, we also don't have to count that. Now, unlike any other program, CalWorks splits the state into two regions, and those two regions have different income limits also, income limits and grant amounts. They divide it into regions, Region 1 and Region 2. Region 1 includes all the Bay Area counties. Generally speaking, Region 1 counties are like coastal, they're traditionally higher cost of living states, or excuse me, counties, but this hasn't been updated in a long time. So Region 2 also has some high cost of living counties in it now. But as someone who is from Stockton, which is San Joaquin County, and a Region 2 county, I feel like I have earned the right to say Region 1 counties are the pretty counties, the nice counties, the counties that you would want to go to, spend time in, hang out in. Region 2 counties are like the dusty counties, the really big farm counties, the hot counties, the counties that you just want to like drive through on your way to somewhere nicer. The exception is going to be like Sacramento. Plenty of people like hanging out in Sacramento. That's a Region 2 county. And whatever county Tahoe is in, that's also a Region 2 county, though I do enjoy spending time there. So for simplicity, I have only included charts for Region 1 on this PowerPoint just because otherwise we would have everything would be doubled and it would get really confusing really quickly. So first we're looking at the gross income test. Again, these limits are for Region 1. This one changes in July, so these are the up-to-date numbers for now. And for gross income, we're going to take the total income. We can subtract out $450 if there's someone who's working, but otherwise we're just going to take their straight income, apply it to this amount, and either they qualify or they don't. These amounts, as you can see, it's really low. CalWORKs is actually a really hard program to qualify for. Once we've determined if they do qualify at this level, we'll continue with the analysis. There are some exceptions here. They're a lot simpler. So if someone has disability income, we can subtract $600. If they have other forms of unearned income, it's all going to count. So like child support, non-disability based benefits that you're getting, that's all going to count. And then if you have earned income, there's also an exclusion that we can use. Once we've figured out the net income, we'll apply it to this test here. The net income test is actually, we're just applying it to the maximum aid payment. And so if the amount is lower than what's on here, then they'll qualify, and what they'll qualify for is that difference if they get income. Uh, we also at this point have to figure out if the household is exempt or non-exempt. An exempt household is one where all adults in the household are receiving disability-based income. Generally, because the amounts are so low, the disability-based income tends to make households ineligible for CalFresh. So those are pretty uncommon. We don't see those very often. Non-exempt households is going to be everyone else, and that's going to be the vast majority. So if you have a non-exempt household, let's say for simplicity's sake, it's a household of one, and they have $500 of countable income, then we would look here on the non-exempt household. 500 is less than 734, so they do qualify, and their grant amount would be $234 because we're taking out that 500 of countable income. CalWORKs does have a resource limit, and everyone is subject to it. The resource limit is these like weird numbers that are listed here. A couple of years ago, the amount was moved to $10,000 and then tied to inflation. So it will adjust every year, but it will also be these like random, hard to memorize numbers. But generally, we're going to count any cash on hand you have, any like liquid resources, stocks, bonds. If you have a non-recurring lump sum payment, that isn't considered income, but it is a resource. So uh like lottery winnings usually count for that. Lawsuit winnings, which actually happens more often than I would expect, or like an inheritance, that sort of thing, that's going to be accountable against the resource limit as opposed to the income limit. If you live in a house that you own, that's exempted. If you have a car that can be exempted. Tax returns are exempted. Uh, Things like that.
We
And
do
let
have a
me,
question here,
yeah.
Jessica. Can someone receive CalWORKs for a child in their home that is not related to them, but they have legal guardianship over?
So you may, I would recommend that you explore foster care benefits because those are going to be higher. Uh, CalWORKs does require a relation within 5 degrees of separation. So if you're not related, then no, you wouldn't be eligible for CalWORKs for that child, even though you're the guardian.
And that's all we have at this time.
Okay. So CalWORKs is time limited for adults. They can only get it for 60 months, and that's a lifetime limit. So once you've used your time, it's up. There are the child can still get aid, but now your income limits, like your assistance unit, has gone down a size. So your income limits are going to be a little bit lower, and your grant amount would go down. You can get extra time There are some exceptions. The big ones that we see actually, I mean, if you're over age 60 or disabled, those are exceptions. We do see those. But the biggest one that we actually work with are dealing with the effects of domestic violence. If you're dealing with the effects of domestic violence, which is defined really broadly and can really be anything, if you're like actively fleeing and trying to like establish a new home and things like that, that certainly counts. But if you've also like you fled years ago, but you're still going to therapy and you have medical appointments for like the harms that were done to you and things like that, that would also count. Anything in there uh, that can give you more time on CalWorks. CalWorks also has work requirements. And so essentially for the 5 years that adults are being aided, they're subject to work. Uh, the hours that you have to do depend on what your family composition is. I've listed it here in the middle box. And again, some people can be exempted from doing work. Again, dealing with the effects of domestic violence can count, but also like you can get a short-term exemption if you, for instance, if you like are sick that month and you're not able to get your hours done, you can get good cause. And you shouldn't be sanctioned for something like that. Uh, One thing I'll note, the work rules are annoying and they can be hard to comply with, but they have a lot of benefits to them too. The cash, as we saw, is like good, but and it's gone up, but it's still like pretty low. You're not gonna be able to survive in the Bay Area on like $930 for two people. But if you need, so CalWorks will provide supportive services in order for you to participate in welfare to work. That means that if there's something that you need in order to complete your welfare to work plan, CalWorks should provide it. So the biggest ones are childcare, honestly, is the biggest one we see. If you need childcare in order to be able to go to work or go to school or whatever your welfare to work activity is, CalWorks should pay for it. They should pay for transportation, which can be either mileage reimbursement or uh, paying for public transportation, and ancillary expenses. And ancillary expenses can be really broad. So, like if you're doing school, then CalWorks won't pay for your tuition, but they should pay for your textbooks. If you're in like a vocational program where you're learning to be a chef and you need like fancy knives and that like really tall like chef hat, CalWorks should pay for that. Uh, I had a colleague had a case where CalWorks paid for her client's employment authorization renewal. The renewal of she was a non-citizen, so the card that you get to allow you to work, she had to renew that during the time, so CalWorks paid for that. Uh, Things like that. If it's something that you need in order to complete your welfare to work plan, then CalWorks should pay for it, and that can actually be a really huge benefit to families. Uh, CalWorks, like CalFresh, is going to be approved for 12 months and you'll have a mid-period report due at 6 months. Hopefully those things are aligned, but if you didn't apply at the same time, they might not be. You can ask the county to align them, but it actually can be a little bit difficult for them because of all the federal rules that they have with reports. Uh, so yeah, I would recommend try to apply together if you can. Uh, your star 7 is going to be, it's actually the same, and you'll have a redetermination that's also going to be the same as Cal Fresh. Ideally, like I said, they're aligned and you're just doing one one report. Just like in CalFresh, there are going to be some things that you are required to report. If your income goes above the income reporting threshold, you have to report that. If you move, you need to report that. That's going to be especially important if you are moving from Region 1 to Region 2. You need to report that right away because if you don't, you're definitely going to be incurring an overpayment since the grant amounts are lower in Region 2 counties. And then fleeing felon status and violations of probation or parole, those require you to report them also, but like a violation of probation or parole requires like a judge to have found that you did that, not just like you missed a meeting with your parole officer and your parole officer was upset with you. And then again, if there's anything that anything else is going to be a voluntary report, and if it'll make your grant go up, you'll want to report it, and if it won't, then you'll just want to wait. Good on questions right now? Great. If you get CalWorks, you should automatically get CalFresh and Medi-Cal. There's an immediate need where you could get $200 at the time of the application and the whole amount within a couple of days. There's a couple other things that you can get, but I'm going to skip over these ones in the interest of time. CalWORKs does have homeless assistance that can be really helpful for people, so I wanted to make sure we talk about that. There's temporary homeless assistance, which helps you pay for short-term housing, like hotels, or like if someone is willing to let you sleep on their couch, CalWORKs would help you pay for that. Uh, there's also permanent homeless assistance, which can help people to secure permanent housing, and that can help with paying back rent or some of your moving costs for a new place. There's also the housing support program that's funded by the state, but each county gets to run theirs a little bit differently. A lot of counties, Contra Costa County included, kind of folds that money into other homeless services that they are providing. So you may not actually know at the front end that that's what you're participating in, but it is really broad and can provide support for like housing navigation, case management, people helping you to like find a place. They can help you with moving costs that the other programs can't, things like that. And then the DV waiver, I didn't forget about the question about child support, and I am coming back to it. So survivors of domestic violence can request a DV waiver to waive any of the program requirements except for deprivation. That's on that very first slide where you're required to have one parent, a child who's deprived of parental support. The income and asset rules and the rules on homeless assistance can't be waived. Anything else can. So we already talked about common uses, time on aid, that's a 60-month limit, and the welfare to work participation. But the other two big ones that we see are paternity establishment and child support cooperation. So when you apply for CalWORKs, you are required to uh, essentially establish who the other parent is. If you know, they're not gonna like make you go through like DNA testing if you don't know, but if you do know who the other parent is, you're required to include that information, and you're required to assign your rights to child support over to the county so that they can pursue that other person. However, if the other parent is an abuser, you can ask for the DV waiver and as a way to prevent you from being able to do that. Uh, Usually, so they're two separate things, and it's really like, would pursuing child support from this other person put me in danger? Separately, would like just listing their name on this form put me in danger? Those they're like two separate questions, but we would recommend. We've had a couple of cases where these like clerical errors happen. It's not any person, but as systems change at the county level, and some of our other counties, I won't say it's happened in Contra Costa County, but the the non-custodial parent, they're tied to the case because they're listed, and then when the computer system goes through some kind of change or upgrade, that other person, the abuser, gets information about the abused on accident. And so we would recommend, if you are at all worried, if you're like in hiding from this person, just don't even like give their information to the county, and if it would put you at risk for that person to have any information about you. So I want to pause here. One, this is the last slide, so if anyone has questions about CalWORKs, let me know. But also the person who asked a question about child support, let me know if that answered your question or not, or if you still have questions.
Double checking the chat right now. No additional questions.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm gonna keep us moving. So let's talk about general assistance. So general assistance is a state mandated program, but it's going to be designed, funded, and administered by the county. So California has 58 counties. That means we have 58 different general assistance programs. So I'm speaking today very specifically about Contra Costa County's general assistance program. Uh, I'm not talking about the other counties' programs, and you would need to explore those programs if you're in another county or have questions. Generally speaking, general assistance is going to be a program of last resort for everyone. You can't qualify for other programs, and you usually have to have like next to no money. The income limits and the resource limits are quite low. In a lot of counties, including Contra Costa, it works primarily as a loan. And so if you start getting SSI or CAPI, then the GA that you received while your application was pending is going to be deducted from uh, the essentially when you're, because SSI takes so long to be approved, you'll get like a large like lump sum payment when it starts. And so the amount of GA that you received in that time will be deducted. And if you have a sponsor, your sponsor might also have to agree to repay. So general assistance in Alameda County is going to go to indigent adults who are determined needy and not supported by other means. You have to have been physically present and living in Contra Costa County for at least 15 days. You don't have to have a physical address, but you do have to have been there. Excuse me. You need to be an indigent legal adult, a married minor, or a minor who doesn't qualify for support under any other program to qualify. If you think that you are a minor who doesn't qualify for support under any other program, uh, let's talk first. You probably qualify for something else, and we can like sort through that. But we can figure it out. The immigration status is actually the same as the other programs that we've talked about, so I'll just keep going. There's some people who just can't get general assistance. If you're a fleeing felon, if you're placed outside the county in non-medical out-of-home care facilities, uh, sorry, that can include incarceration. If you're incarcerated, you don't qualify. If you're in Contra Costa, but you don't plan to stay in Contra Costa, you have an established residency. If you're getting SSI, if you've timed out a CalWorks or you're ineligible due to sanctions or penalties, you're not eligible for general assistance until your youngest child is 18, even if they're not living with you. So the way that looks is we'll see someone who's coming out of incarceration or like their child has been removed from their care for other reasons, and they're trying to get general assistance now, but they got CalWorks in the past and they timed out. And so even though that child isn't with them anymore, they're still not eligible until that child turns 18, which can be, if that child was like an infant at the time, that can be a really long time. Uh, People who are undocumented don't qualify, and general assistance is time limited. So if you reached your time limit in another county, or even if the other county isn't time limited, you wouldn't be eligible. So for instance, San Francisco, their general assistance program isn't time limited. You can get general assistance in San Francisco 12 months out of the year. In Contra Costa, it's only 3 months. So if someone moves from San Francisco to Contra Costa County and they've already received 3 months of GA in San Francisco, Contra Costa isn't going to give them general assistance. Uh, Income is going to be defined really broadly. We're going to count anything that's available in cash. We're going to count any in-kind benefits, which means non-cash benefits that they receive for like utilities, food, shelter. We'll even count if like your grandma offers to give you money and you were like, no, grandma, you can't afford that. We might count that too as income in the in the GA program. And they are going to require you to apply for any other program you might be eligible for. So the biggest ones we see are going to be Social Security and unemployment. And the resource limit in Contra Costa County is only $50. People can apply online at benefitscal.com. Again, this is Contra Costa County specific. Not every county has it available online. Contra Costa County does. You can apply by phone or you can go in person to one of the Contra Costa offices. They have an office in Antioch, Pleasant Hill, and Richmond. I'm not going to read out the verifications to you, but they are going to make you provide verifications. Unlike in CalFresh, they can dictate specifically what form those verifications take. Once you go through the process, you got $336 for an individual. If you have disabilities, you can get up to $375. But 53% of your GA is for housing, 47% is for like your other costs. And so the rent portion is going to be sent directly to your landlord. So if you don't have a landlord, or if you do, you're not getting that 53% in general. So, or I mean directly. So the amount that you actually get on your EBT card each month is, about like 150 something, 140 something. It's quite low. But you'll get your GA onto your EBT card. Uh, oops. People who are unhoused can get that 53% of the grant for 30 days. But after that, you're going to be offered shelter, and you can only get that part of the grant if there is no shelter available. Or if you have a good reason for not being able to stay in it, like the only shelter that's available is too far away for you to be able to access. If a GA recipient is deemed employable, then you're only eligible for 90 days of GA in a 12-month period. You can be exempted from that time limit if you're unemployable, and it just depends on what makes you unemployable, how long that exception can last. You do have to report quarterly for GA. If anything changes, you have to report within 5 calendar days. You can be sanctioned, which means you're not allowed to get GA for a certain amount of time if you're non-compliant with program rules. There are appeals that are available. I only mention this because the appeals are due 30 days from the date on the notice, which will run pretty quickly. Oftentimes when people come to us with problems with GA, their deadline to appeal has either run or is right about to run. So I just really want to flag that. Your appeal has to be made in writing. You can call and they should help you submit it in writing if you're unable to do so. But if you're able to help if you're able to help someone, it would be great if you can help them submit it in writing to this office. Uh, and the decision ultimately, your appeal will go to a hearing and your decision will be made by a non-attorney county staff and you'll get a written decision after. Okay. That's all I have on general assistance. Any questions before we go into like the fastest Social Security training I've ever done?
At this point, we have no other questions within the chat, Jessica.
Great. Okay, Social Security. So there's actually 3 main types of Social Security benefits. There's also actually several like smaller types, like survivor benefits and things like that that I'm not even going to mention today. But we have retirement, Social Security, disability income, and SSI. Retirement is I mean, I think it's the most traditional idea of Social Security. It's also the first one, the first version that existed. Essentially, you work, you pay into the system, and when you retire, you pull, the system pays out. And what you pull out is based on what you put in. You can retire early, starting at age 62, and until your full retirement age, you'll have a limit on your annual income. So that's something to flag for people. Um, your age of retirement depends on when you were born. Currently, though, anyone born after 1960 has a retirement age of 67. There's actually a more detailed chart on the Social Security website. I just pulled out a couple pieces, a couple like markers on here for people to see. If you do retire early, your grant is reduced for the rest of your life, not just up until your retirement age. And so it's important that people realize if you are retiring early, like if you retire at 62, if you're born in 1960 or later, you retire at 62, you're getting only 70% of what you would be eligible for each month, which can be really huge for people. On the flip side, if you retire late, you can get a bonus. It goes up to age 70 only, but if you wait to retire until age 70, you can get an increase, and that again increases over time. The longer you wait, the more of a bonus you get, and again, that will last your lifetime. That's all on retirement. Retirement's really easy, and people never have problems with their retirement unless they do early retirement and earn too much money. So let's talk about SSDI. So SSDI is a federal insurance program that provides monthly payments to eligible workers and their family if the worker is a covered employee who's unable to work because of severe disability. So if you get SSDI, excuse me, again, it's an insurance program. So you paid in when you're working, and if you become injured, you are able to pull out. And also, like if you have a child or a spouse, they would also be able to pull out on your record. In order to be an eligible worker, you have to be disabled, which means you're unable to work because of a medically certified condition that's lasted or is expected to last at least 12 months, and you have a prior work history. So you've paid in enough to the system. So you have to earn, it's based on like the idea of earning credits. Credits used to be called quarters, so you can get only 4 credits in a year, but they changed that idea. I don't know why. But this year, each 18 like 1 credit is $1,810, and so once you've earned that amount of or you've paid in that amount of money, uh you get a credit essentially. SSDI is not needs-based, so there's no asset limits, there's no income limits. You're able to receive it. How many credits you need will depend on how old you are. And so the older you are, the more credits you need, with the idea that when you were younger, you weren't putting in that much. But also the amount of the payment that you get is based on how much you put in. So if you're like age 22, you might have earned 6 credits. I started working when I was 17, so I certainly had 6 credits by the time I was 23. But I worked at like Subway. So like the amount that I had paid in was like so low that my payments would have been nothing. And like I said, that'll go up to 40 credits by the time you're age 62. Disability is really complicated, and it creates this like 5-step process. I'll break down this definition on the next couple of slides, so I won't like this definition is here for you to refer to. But this here really breaks down that definition. So first is a person making what's called substantial gainful activity. That literally means, are they making 16.20 a month? If you're making that amount of money, by definition, you're not disabled, and we're not going to continue with the analysis. Does your medical condition interfere with basic work activity? Most people most people, that's not where you're going to lose the analysis. Does your impairment meet or medically equal a listed impairment? So if you Google Social Security listing of impairments, they have a bunch of different diagnoses and the symptoms that you have to experience in order to qualify on the listing of impairments. That's going to be hard to meet. They're really precise. And Jose, I'll get to you after I get through this list. The next question, can you do work that you've previously done? And if not, are you able to do work that exists in significant numbers in the national economy? And so that means like you're looking at like if we're in California, if there's like 100,000 jobs across the country doing like, I don't know, nut sorting actually is one of the jobs that people get disqualified for. You would be denied Social Security. It's a really high standard. It's a really high bar. It's really difficult to qualify. The vast majority of people are, only about a third of people are approved at the initial application. So if someone wants to establish disability with Social Security, I recommend they get an attorney. And I recommend that they don't just keep applying. You should appeal if your application is denied. And there are attorneys who take this case. You don't pay anything up front. You'll pay out of the back end. And the agency actually limits how much you can get paid. And so there are a lot of private attorneys who take these cases. Go ahead, Jose.
Alrighty, so 2 questions. The first one is, will a person's personal assets, for example, home ownership, impact their Social Security benefit amount payments upon retirement?
So if you're getting retirement or SSDI, the two that are based on you paying into the system, then no, your income and your assets don't matter. If you're getting SSI, which I'm going to get to next, then yes, your assets matter, but the home you live in is exempt.
And then the last one is the definition for SSDI or SSI?
That definition is Social Security's definition of disability. So either benefit would use that definition. For SSI, we're going to talk about next. So let me get there, and then if you still have questions, I'll answer them. Okay, so on SSDI, again, like I said, you're gonna get paid based on what you put into the system. That's gonna be your number of years of working and the amount of your earnings. It is skewed a little bit towards low income workers. So like percentage wise, low income workers get a little more than higher income workers. People who receive SSDI are eligible for Medicare after 24 months. You may also be eligible for CalFresh, and you may also be able to get SSI. You can get SSI and SSDI at the same time if your SSDI is long enough. There's a 5-month waiting period, but usually that has run, like it takes so long to determine disability that those 5 months have run. And like I said, certain family may be able to qualify under your record. So if I start getting SSDI, my husband could theoretically qualify. My adult parents could theoretically qualify. If I have children, they could theoretically qualify. It just depends on the situation. You can apply at Social Security. I'm actually just gonna like skip through all of these. I will flag your disability is reassessed regularly. It just depends on like the frequency depends, but it can be reassessed as soon as 6 to 18 months after. And if you start working and you earn too much money, you could be terminated, not because you've gone over an income limit, but because you've shown that you have the ability to work. Okay, so let's talk about SSI. This is a cash aid program for people who are 65 or older or people who are disabled. Like I said, the definition of disability is the same, so I won't talk about that as much. But you either have to be over age 65 or meet that definition of disability. You also have to be low income, which means that your countable income is below the current benefit rate and your resources are below $2,000 for an individual or $3,000 for a couple. And then there are immigration status requirements. There are some things that aren't going to count towards the resource limit. The home you live in, one car for transportation, your household goods and personal effects, a burial space. Insurance policies with a combined face value of less than $1,500. This one is one that gets people in trouble a lot because they have these insurance policies that have a high face value, but initially have a really low cash out value. And the cash out value is actually what counts against you. And so the cash out value increases over time, which people don't realize. And so eventually it gets too high and Social Security finds it a year later, and then they'll send you this overpayment notice saying you owe them like $15,000. So if people have insurance policies, my biggest advice is making sure you're keeping an eye on the value of it. Most other things are going to count towards the resource limit, and it can be very unforgiving. The resource limit is a huge problem in Social Security. So in California, this is the amount that you can get. As you can see, the grant amounts really depend on your situation. Most people are going to get this first top box, independent living status for single people, 1206.94. That's what most people receive. These other rates, most people don't like most people don't get them. Children get 1064, 27. If you're living in the household of another, that means that you're not paying your fair market value rent. If you're not paying fair market value rent, then you only get 889.87. Couples get $2,057.83. I'm just kind of reading this chart too at this point. But this tells you in California specifically what people get this year. California supplements SSI, so it's a little higher than the federal rate, which is just below $1,000 right now. SSDI and SSI are very different, and it's important to know what someone's receiving because of the rules that they have to follow are very different. SSDI is going to be for people who pay into the system. So if you have someone who doesn't have work history or doesn't have a lot of work, they're probably getting SSI. If they're getting two checks, you know right away that they're getting SSI and SSDI. If they're getting paid on the first, you know it's SSI. If it's any other day of the month, it's SSDI. Oh yeah. Those are the big ones that I'll flag for you all. But yeah, SSI has a lot of rules that you want to make sure that you're following up with, so it's important to know what someone's getting. And the rest of the slides, let me see. Oh, we're doing okay. So essentially, if someone wants to apply, you can go to the office. I recommend you call and make an appointment. Because of the shutdown, you may have difficulty with that. When you do apply, these are the sorts of things you might want to take with you. It's actually the same for SSDI, but information about your medical care. And if you do want to appeal, if your application is denied, you have 60 days to file the appeal. And you can do so online if it's timely. So I put that here. All right, that's taking me to the end. I have my email here. If you have questions and you want to reach out to me, feel free to email me. If you want to send clients, please send them directly. Don't give my email out to your clients because it's just too much for me to keep up with. But I'll pause here for any other questions, and otherwise, it's been great being here with you all this morning.
We do have two questions right now. The first is from a CCHP case manager. An undocumented Contra Costa County resident does not qualify for SSI. Can I help him apply to get the denial letter to then assist him with applying to CAPI, CAPI?
If they're undocumented, they don't apply. They don't qualify for CAPI either. So I mean, you could, but yeah.
The next one is, will you be addressing Social Security death benefits to minors?
No. Can I just actually amend my CAPI answer? If the person is undocumented and they're a survivor of violent crime, then they can qualify. So the same standards we've been talking about throughout the programs. That like if they're a survivor of trafficking or other violent crimes, including domestic violence, they can qualify for CAPI on that basis, but otherwise undocumented people aren't going to qualify.
Alrighty, so this concludes today's Family Justice Institute presentation. A huge thank you to Jessica Mark. We really appreciate you making and taking the time here to share the presentation with us and going through some great questions that we've had. As a reminder, you will be getting a follow-up email. The follow-up email will include the presentation. It will include the link for this video recording, and it will also include a link for survey feedback. So please take some moments out of your busy days to provide us with any feedback that you might have. And until our next Family Justice Institute next month, we'll see you all later. Have a great one. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.